Hi everyone, Dave Bradshaw here, alongside RevPro owner and booker Andy Quildan. We've just come off air on live in Southampton 42, and we are just 6 days away from the British J Cup. And Andy, I want to start by talking about the British J Cup, because in our final moments tonight, it was kind of chaos, and four of the people at the heart of that chaos were four of the 8 men who are going to compete in the British J Cup. One of them was Joe Lando, who just moments earlier had come very, very close to unseating Mark Davis as the AEW national champion. So first of all, thoughts on Lando?
Well, it was an exceptional effort from Joe Lando against Dunkzilla Davis, and it was great to have Mark Davis back in a Revolution Pro Wrestling ring. And it's always humbling when someone like Mark Davis, who obviously plied his trade with us for so long, and we've seen so many of his moments over the years with him, but then when he wants to come back, it's great to see, because he doesn't have to. And I think that's the important thing that I want to point out. And it's much like, we look at people from our past, like Zack Sabre Jr., who's going to be joining us August 29th over Arena Wembley. Plug one, got in there straight away. And Mark Davis, you can add his name to the list of, the RevPro alumni, if you will, who come back and kind of compete for us. And it was great to have Mark Davis here, and it was a hell of a match between himself and Joe Lando, very much a David and Goliath type clash, and I think it was everything we expected and more. And I think Joe Lando absolutely held his own in there with Davis, and I think that he really demonstrated his speed against Davis, and I think that's look, power won in the end. I think I made the analogy on commentary about power versus speed, and however I put it, but power won out in the end. But it was very close on a number of occasions. I think Joe Lando can be very, very proud of that showing that he's put in, and there's going to be a lot of new eyeballs on him as a result of that contest tonight. And of course, that's also a part of this as well. This is what we want to do. We want to be able to put new eyeballs on our talent, so people who are tuning in to watch Mark Davis and Joe Lando, or to watch Mark Davis, will get to experience Joe Lando perhaps for the first time. And this is the kind of thing that we want to do. Maybe they'll stick around for the rest of the show and they'll see some of the other great matches we saw. Maybe they'll then dip into some other matches on our RevPro on demand, which has got absolutely everything on it. So yeah, it's a great opportunity for him, and he took it with both hands. But where it pertains to the British J Cup, you ask yourself a question, is he going to be 100% going in to that J Cup? And of course, according to Leighton Buzzard, he blew it. He knew he'd blow it, and it's going to be a long time. Leighton Buzzard believes he doesn't know anything, including Joe Lando, a rematch for the undisputed British Cruiserweight Championship, and he's made it clear the only way he's going to give him that match is if Joe Lando can win British J Cup.
I mean, it's very interesting the way that Buzzard was conducting himself tonight. Interesting is a polite way of putting it, I think, but obviously trying to get in Lando's head. Buzzard earlier in the night had a victory over Isaac Murray, and then got on the microphone saying exactly that, basically, that Lando was going to be regretting the fact that he went up against Mark Davis. He came out to gloat after Lando had lost the match against Davis. He's already said that he won't give Lando a rematch unless he makes it all the way through the British J Cup. Do you think Leighton Buzzard is afraid of facing Joe Lando with the Cruiserweight title on the line again?
I think potentially, and I wouldn't say afraid, but I feel like he has to face the consequence of his actions. And I think that's the one thing that Leighton Buzzard doesn't want to do. He's very good at making excuses, but he doesn't want to face the consequence of his actions. He knows when he goes up with Joe Lando, it's going to be a very different Joe Lando. It's going to be a very different mindset, and he's going to be coming for revenge. And I think if Leighton Buzzard could, he would prefer to avoid that. And I think that's Leighton Buzzard's mindset. I don't think he's afraid of Joe Lando, but I think he doesn't want to deal with the should we say, the mess that he's created.
I think he's afraid of losing his championship. Right?
Oh, absolutely.
And I think because last time, to beat Joe Lando to win the championship, he had to carry out this whole ruse that was months long, pretending he was someone he wasn't. Now that mask has been removed and he doesn't have that as a tactic he can use, I think, and this is in my mind the reason that he's behaving the way he is. He thinks without that tactic at his disposal, does he know how he would beat that?
Well, that's a good point, and that's something that perhaps we can. Well, I'm not going to ask Joe Lando, but I'm Leighton Buzzard, sorry, but maybe you can.
You're spending your Saturday with him next week,
yeah,
aren't you?
Well, yeah, that's it. That's Yeah, Leighton Buzzard's going to be the guest commentator during the British J Cup. He's going to be scouting the competition up close and personal. So yeah, I will be sat next to Leighton Buzzard.
It's going to be an interesting situation, not just for you, but for everyone who's competing in the British J Cup, among whom are two men who competed as tag team partners tonight. We saw them, Nino Bryan, of course, the winner of last year's British J Cup, and Leon Cage, who's been an ally of sorts for Nino Bryan, but also a rival. There's a respectful but competitive rivalry between the two. I think that went up a couple of gears today after the way that tag team match ended for them, with a bit of a miscue leading to their defeat. Where do you see the chances, first of Leon Cage and then of Nino Bryan, of going back to back?
Well, look, it's never been, in terms of, you said firstly Leon Cage, didn't you?
Well, whichever way around you want to do it.
Well, we'll start with Nino Bryan, because in terms of going back to back, like, no one's ever been able to do it. No one's repeated the success of winning the British J Cup twice, let alone go back to back. So the odds would be against Nino Bryan, but the odds have been against Nino Bryan on many occasions. And you look at Nino Bryan, you look at that undisputed British Cruiserweight Championship run, I'd say a historic Cruiserweight Championship run, and some of the fantastic matches that he had for that undisputed British Cruiserweight Championship. And you've got to think that Nino Bryan is one of the favourites to win it. But then you also look at Leon Cage, and you've got to feel that, you know, Leon Cage, he feels like he's one of those wrestlers who's bubbling underneath, doesn't he? He feels like he's got all the potential in the world. He steals a show on multiple occasions. It feels like he needs some championship gold to validate all the claims that everyone is saying about him, about being the future of this business. And winning the British J Cup this coming Saturday could be a huge start for the futurist.
You said about Nino being one of the favourites. Who is the favourite? If you had to bet your house, who are you picking?
I don't know. Look, there's so many.
I'm not answering that question.
There's another man who's entering the British J Cup and looking to become the first man to win it twice. That's also Robbie X, who's going to be making a return to Revolution Pro Wrestling. And Robbie X is no longer the world of wrestling's best kept secret, is he? Like, the world now knows how good Robbie X is, not just our little secret, you know. And I think you look at Robbie X and you've got to think he's potentially one of the favourites. But everyone who's in it, you know, Jackie Kamei, he could be an unknown quantity, but I know from watching him, he's, you know, one of the most innovative and most exciting and fast wrestlers playing their trade in the world, and he could shock a lot of people if people don't prepare for him. Marcus Mathers, one of the most unpredictable professional wrestlers, and also one of the brightest stars. And you know, and I feel like you look at Marcus Mathers and you think he's the type of wrestler, you know, young independent wrestler, you know, making headlines in the US. You know, the type of guy, I think about guys who came in the past, and I think about the tournament, one of the inaugural tournaments for that Cruiserweight Championship just before we became RevPro. And I think about one of the people in that tournament was like Sammy Callahan as an example, and like Marcus Mathers could be, you know, that kind of ilk, and Callahan made it all the way to the final of that tournament. So look, I think it's going to be,
it's just some elite level sitting on the fence, by the way. I will say, so you've named almost everyone in the tournament. But
who have I missed? Will Caven. He's a former undisputed British Cruiserweight champion. They call him Ruthless for a reason. He's able to get the job done. So look, anyone who's in the British J Cup could win this tournament. And yes, it's some elite fence sitting, right? But it's an elite level of competition.
Yeah. Although, to be fair to you, I think that does speak to the depth of talent in this competition this year, and of course the level of competition to seize that opportunity, because we know that what's at stake for the winner of the British J Cup is a shot against the undisputed British Cruiserweight champion at the OVO Arena, Wembley, at our 14-year anniversary. And so really the stakes have never been higher in the British.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, you can look at it and say, look, oh, well, you know, it's going to be very hard for like someone like a Jackie Kamei to walk out victorious, come back to Wembley and whatever, and or like a Marcus Mathers. But like, look what happened when Neon challenged for the undisputed British Cruiserweight Championship, and he won that championship gold. You know, it's not unheard of that an outsider can come in and win our championships, win our gold. You know, if you even look at the British J Cup, you look at some of the winners of the British J Cup, and you don't need to look far to see an international winner. Of course, Leo Rush was victorious in the British J Cup. Speedball Mike Bailey was victorious in the British J Cup. Jushin Thunder Liger was victorious in the British J Cup. So I don't know how many years we've been going, but there's 3 international winners there.
And every year it attracts some of the best international talent.
Absolutely. Right? So so it's not out of this world to think someone from outside could come in and win this tournament either. So it's just an exciting time. And it's going to be great to be at the Gordon Craig this coming Saturday.
Now, we're talking a little bit about Wembley, and one man who's already booked his place at Wembley is Connor Mills. We know by virtue of him winning the Revolution Rumble, he's going to challenge the undisputed British heavyweight champion, whoever that is. As of a fortnight ago, that's now Michael Oku, his arch nemesis, a man who he's faced many, many times before. Both of them were victorious in singles action against different opponents tonight. After Oku's win, Mills was going to try and come out to confront him, got attacked by the New Sons of Southampton, and then they kind of pushed Mills into the ring where Oku could just kind of stand with his foot on his chest in a very humiliating moment, I guess, for Mills. And you could see Mills' anger afterwards as he attacked the contenders.
Yeah, look, it feels like they're on a collision course for one another, and I'm sure it's going to do a great deal to kind of calm things between them. You know, it's just, I don't know. It's Mills and Oku. You have to understand the story between Michael Oku and Connor Mills. You have to go back to 2020. You have to go back to Michael Oku inviting Connor Mills into Revolution Pro Wrestling. But really, you can go back further than that. You can go back to Michael Oku's first day in a training school, and Connor Mills being the person who took him under the wing, being somewhat of a mentor and best friend. And you look at the history they've had with one another, and I've been quoted as saying that their friendship is unbreakable. You know, we all thought that we thought they were done before they'd even got started. And then obviously COVID happened. The whole world was turned upside down. We forget what a crazy time that was in the world, but he gave a lot of people's perspective, and he gave Connor Mills and Michael Oku a lot of perspective and how much they'd been through with each other, or so we thought. And after all of that, Connor Mills then turned his back on Michael Oku. And again, I think that's the underlying feeling that Michael Oku can't shake. And I think that's why this one's so deep, this one's so personal. And what's so hard for me to see is the amount of people who are getting caught, you know, in the crosshairs between Oku and Mills. But it's a combustible situation. I'm not sure if the Sons of Southampton know what they were doing, interjecting themselves into that situation. But one thing we do know for sure, and that's Michael Oku appreciates their passion.
Yeah, as we heard him say. Now, listen, speaking of the New Sons of Southampton, their leader, David Francisco, was in action tonight as well. You talk about the fire in the feud between Oku and Mills. There's plenty of fire in the feud between Francisco and JJ Gale, which was reignited in a kind of a grudge match here in the 1865 tonight. A match that Francisco ultimately won via disqualification, kind of a hollow victory, although he'll still claim it.
Not the first hollow victory that David Francisco's had in RevPro.
But it all happened because Gale got a hold of Francisco's belt and started whipping Francisco with it. I don't know when Gale calms down whether he's going to see that as being satisfactory or not, because ultimately he lost the match. He did get to get some kind of payback. But regardless, do you think that now JJ Gale will be able to move on from David Francisco? Will David Francisco allow that to happen?
Look, I think listening to both of them post-match, I don't think so. I think this isn't over. And I think we're going to try and get something sorted to try and underline what's going on between the pair of them, because they're not in a good situation either. And again, it's almost like I don't want to sit here and sound surprised. You know, we're in the fight business ultimately, and it's like when we're creating all these situations, and everyone's competing for the top prize, it goes within the territory that stuff like this happens. But it's you do start to wonder where things need to go to draw that line under it and move on. And I think we've seen like throughout the years, like stuff never really gets done. Like even if we feel like it's closed, you know, people still hold on to those feelings for a very long time, and only takes the slightest thing to reignite those emotions, reignite those feelings. So, look, that's why I say, again, I'm going to use it as a plug, but that's why I say RevPro On Demand is such a wonderful resource, because you can look back at the history of all these wrestlers and see who've crossed paths in the past, and look for any signs about or clues as to what someone's thinking. But what I know about David Francisco is he will never let go of something. You hear him to this day talking about that undisputed, that I want to say, I was about to say that tainted undisputed British heavyweight championship win, but it's that championship win that didn't even happen.
It wasn't a win,
right? That overturned.
It was 16 months ago.
Yeah,
now at least
that overturned call, and he will never let it go. So you've got to feel he's not going to let this one go with JJ Gale. We need to get it resolved.
And while we're on a whistle stop tour, that's easy for me to say, whistle stop tour of some of the biggest rivalries currently going on in Rev Pro. One of those right now is definitely Kanji and Rio. Rio not here today, but Kanji certainly was, and Kanji in one hell of a match, arguably a show stealer against Myla Grace this afternoon. Important for Kanji to get the win, but also what did you think of Myla Grace today?
Exceptional performance from Myla Grace. She showed us exactly what she's all about. Kanji, I believe, is the ultimate test when it comes to our women's division, just because she's such a complex professional wrestler. And Myla Grace, time and time again throughout that contest, rose to the challenge. Looked very exciting prospect. I think Kanji maybe took her a little bit lightly to begin with, but by the end of that, she'd earned Kanji's respect. And I think that's there's a lot to be said for that. And I think that it was a great performance from both women. It was a great display of professional wrestling, and a great display of this game of human chess, because that's really what it was. And I think Myla Grace can walk away from this contest being encouraged about what just happened. I think Kanji can be very happy that she's picked up a victory, but it's also a bit of a wake up call for Kanji to know she can't rest on her laurels. She can't be focusing only on Rio, because there's so many other talented women in the background, who want that spot, who want the top spot. And of course, sat on top of that mountain, cackling at it all, is Alexis Falcon.
Well, now she's regained consciousness.
Now, absolutely, yeah. So we're working on setting up a rematch between Alexis Falcon and Alice Inc. Alexis Falcon's proven to be quite difficult, but obviously this rematch will happen. The championship will be on the line when we make it happen, so just keep your eyes peeled on what's going on with that. Kanji and Rio, we're going to have some news soon on trying to draw a line under that as well, because look, we're heading into I want to say draw a line, look, in the best way we can. Look, I've tried and spectacularly failed many times in the past, but we're trying to get something done with Kanji and Rio, to hopefully settle some scores or answer any questions, so we're working on that. And of course, look, we want to get everything squared up by the time we reach July 25th. The women's Grand Prix coming to the hangar in Wolverhampton. So that's an exciting time for our women's division as well. And then come the end of July 25th's Women's Grand Prix, we're going to have an idea of who will be challenging for that Women's Championship at the OVO Arena in Wembley on August 29th.
Now, lastly, I want to talk a little bit about the tag team division, because a week before we're in Wolverhampton, July 18th, we're in Bradford, Summer Sizzler. We know it's going to be Slater Dojo against the Young Guns, 2 out of 3 falls for the undisputed British tag team titles. Neither of those teams were here today, but there were 2 tag matches today. And look, we can go back and forth on the means by which both of these teams secured their victories, and have secured several victories recently. But ultimately, it's a game of wins and losses, right? And for both Top Tier and for True and Lacey, you've got to be grudgingly impressed with their ability to string together a series of victories now.
Yeah, it's starting to turn winning into a habit. And I think that, look, True and Lacey are a team that we've known for a long time, have got a world of potential, and sometimes they let themselves down with the way they behave. But I think they're a safe bet for huge stars of our tag team division in the future, and someone that everyone needs to be keeping their eye on. I think that's been very clear since day one when they walked into Revolution Pro Wrestling. The biggest compliment I can give them is they reminded me of the Young Guns when they first set foot in a Revolution Pro Wrestling ring. So I think that's the biggest compliment I can give True and Lacey. Top Tier, bit of a throwback team, no nonsense. unless it's them causing the
What's that?
nonsense.
A bit of nonsense.
Yeah. But but I think they're really starting to mesh and gel together as a tag team. And the more they team together, the more dangerous they're going to be. And like I say, you turn winning into a habit. That breeds confidence, and confidence breeds results. And it's just the results driven business at the end of the day. And it's just that endless cycle. And I think Top Tier, despite what, people think of them, are doing a great job in kind of, making an impression, leaving a mark wherever they go, rubbing people up the wrong way, but winning professional wrestling matches.
Well, look, we're almost out of time. I know you're going to go and get some rest because you got the British. You're going to be at the British J-Cup alongside Leighton Buzzard, as we said, 6 days from now. Busy summer. We've already talked about so many of the big events coming up. Obviously Wembley, but also the Women's Grand Prix, Summer Sizzler. We've touched on as well. I'm back with us July 5th when we're back live in London. Bandido and Kaylee Ray joining us there. It's non-stop right now. Andy, we'll let you go rest. Thanks as always for your time. Have fun next week. And by the time we talk again, we'll know who is going to Wembley to challenge for the undisputed British Cruiserweight Championship.